A very warm welcome to Africa. Good morning. We are broadcasting the news making headlines across Africa. My name is Aina Raizakweyo alongside the gorgeous Glenora Shipura. Good morning.
Good morning, Aina. Now, Aina, if you ever want to gift me something, this next bit might be just a little hint.
Okay.
Today is Chocolate with Almonds Day. Truer words were never spoken. Chocolate is a delicious substance that has been loved and loaded by every tier of society, from the poorest to the richest. Kings have traded for it, and men have killed for it, and even gods have bowed for it. The almond is equally referred to in the Bible as being among the best of fruits. Chocolate with Almonds Day celebrates the coming together of these two substances. Let's take a look at this video on just that.
All right, let's get into the news making headline. AU urges probe into Western Ethiopia attacks. The head of the African Union Commission called yesterday for an investigation into deadly attacks in a restive area of Western Ethiopia and urged the authorities to ensure civilians are protected. At least 2 massacres have reportedly taken place in recent weeks in Western Oromia, with the Ethiopian authorities blaming the Oromo Liberation Army for the bloodshed claims the rebel group have denied. The European Union has urged Ethiopia's government to lift restrictions on fuel supplies to the war-wrecked Tigray region, warning that shortages are crippling the distribution of emergency aid.
In our next story, suspected jihadis raid Nigeria prison and free hundreds. Suspected Boko Haram jihadists using guns and explosives have blasted their way into a prison near Nigeria's capital, freeing hundreds of inmates in an operation to release jailed comrades, the government said on Wednesday. Now, Tuesday's night's brazen attacks on the outskirts of Abuja came hours after an ambush on a presidential security convoy in the northwest, in a fresh illustration of the struggle Nigeria faces to overcome a security crisis. Boko Haram is one of the jihadist groups involved in Nigeria's grinding 13-year conflict in the country's northeast. But Nigerian officials sometimes use Boko Haram as a general phrase to refer to jihadists or other armed groups. Now, one security official was killed when the gunmen breached the jail using high-grade explosives. Some prisoners surrendered while others were recaptured with military roadblocks set up around the penitentiary. Attacks on prisons in Nigeria have happened in the past, with gunmen seeking to free inmates. More than 1,800 prisoners escaped last year after heavily armed men attacked a prison in southeast Nigeria using explosives.
Sudan coup leader attacks civilians as protesters rally again. Sudan's coup leader Abdel Fattah el-Burhan dismissed the last civilian member of his ruling body as part of power shift he has proposed, but protesters who have rejected his pledge again took to the streets. Burhan, who grabbed power in a coup last October that drew international condemnation, in a surprise move on Monday vowed to make room for civilian groups to form a new transitional government. The transitional government, uprooted by Burhan last year, had been painstakingly forged between the military and the civilian faction in 2019 following mass protests that prompted the army to oust longtime dictator Omar al-Bashir. Sudan's main civilian alliance, the Forces for Freedom and Change, have labeled Burhan's last move a giant ruse and tactical retreat. They also called for continued public pressure and call heeded by protesters who manned makeshift street barricades from rocks and tires of the 7th straight day.
Somalia will talk to Al-Shabaab when the time is right. Somalia's new president, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, says ending Al-Shabaab's violent insurgency requires more than a military approach, and his government will negotiate with the extremist group only when the time is right. He said the Al-Qaeda affiliate responsible for deadly attacks across East Africa had developed a coping mechanism to military aggression and could not be eliminated by force alone. Al-Shabaab has been seeking to overthrow the foreign-backed government in Mogadishu for over a decade and remains a potent threat despite efforts to defeat them militarily. Now, Al-Shabaab fighters were driven out of Mogadishu in 2011 by an African Union force, but the group still controls swaths of countryside and the capacity to launch frequent and deadly strikes on civilian and military targets. Now, the former academic and peace activist said that cutting off Al-Shabaab's financial flows and countering their hateful message needed to complement a military approach. Shortly after his election, Mohammed welcomed an announcement by U.S. President Joe Biden to redeploy American troops to Somalia, reversing a decision by Donald Trump to withdraw most of the U.S. forces from the fight against Al-Shabaab.
Now, in our next story, Boris Johnson to stand down as a trolley leader. Boris Johnson is to stand down as Conservative Leader Party after losing the support of his ministers and MPs. The Conservative leadership contest will take place this summer, and a new Prime Minister will be in place in time for the party's conference in October. In the meantime, Mr. Johnson will continue as Prime Minister. He had vowed to keep going following a wave of resignation from the government for his leadership, but has now decided to step down. Mr. Johnson is expected to give a resignation statement outside number 10 Downing Street later. Mr. Johnson became Prime Minister in July 2019 after winning a trolley leadership contest and went on to win a historic landslide general election victory 5 months after that. He won the election vowing to get Brexit done, but his government has been dogged by a series of controversies in recent months, not least a police investigation into parties in Downing Street during lockdown. Now, after the break, we bring you more news. Stay with Africa. Good morning.
In Business 7, you get news on current economic, financial, and business matters in Namibia. The weekly show features interviews with experts and in-depth analysis of burning issues in a way that caters for ordinary Namibians and business connoisseurs alike. For news-related or advertising queries, please contact B7 at synergy.com.na.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. We continue bringing you the latest in news stories. In our next story, world moving backwards on eliminating hunger and malnutrition. The number of people affected by hunger globally rose to as many as 828 million in 2021, an increase of about 46 million since 2020 and 150 million since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, according to a new United Nations report that provides fresh evidence that the world is moving further away from its goal of ending hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition in all its forms by 2030. Now, the 2022 edition of the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World report presents updates on the food security and nutrition situation around the world. Some of its findings reveal the following. Around 2.3 billion people in the world, or 29.3%, were moderately or severely food insecure in 2021, 350 million more compared to before the outbreak of the pandemic. Nearly 924 million people faced food insecurity at severe levels an increase of 207 million in 2 years.
South Africa electricity crisis, no power for up to 6 hours per day. South Africa is gripped by a winter of discontent as the country faces its biggest ever power crisis. People are experiencing rolling blackouts for up to 6 hours a day and are having to face a bitterly cold winter with an erratic and unreliable power supply. A typical day of what the state-run power company Eskom says coal stage 6 load shedding consists of waking up to no power, driving to work through congested roads because the traffic lights aren't working, being pummeled by the din of generators at workplaces, and then finding power has been cut once more when you get back home. Poor management and corruption at Eskom means South Africa has been experiencing power cuts for many years, but this is poised to be the worst yet. The country is fast approaching last year's figure of 2,521 gigawatt hour of electricity cut from the grid. So far, Eskom has shed 2,276 gigawatt hours, and it is only July.
New political declaration to halve road traffic deaths and injuries by 2030 is a milestone achievement. Now, the World Health Organization welcomes a political declaration to be adopted by member states during the high-level meeting of the UN General Assembly on global road safety. It commits to cut road traffic deaths and injuries by 50% by 2030, a milestone for road safety and sustainable mobility. Now, road safety affects everyone. We step from our homes every day onto the roads that take us to our jobs, schools, and to meet our vital daily needs. Yet our transport systems remain far too dangerous. No death should be acceptable on our roads. Now, the future of mobility should promote health and well-being, protect the environment, and benefit all, said Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, Director General, WHO. It will require transformative leadership from the highest level of governments to act on the political declaration to make that vision a reality. Worldwide road crashes currently kill around 1.3 million people each year, more than 2 every minute, and more than 90% occur in low and middle income countries. Crashes are the biggest killer of children and young people globally.
In our next story, unprecedented emergency ravaging drought-affected communities across the Horn of Africa. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said communities in the Horn of Africa are facing a threat of starvation following 4 consecutive failed rainy seasons in parts of Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. A climatic event not seen in the last 40 years. At least 18.6 million people are already waking each day to high levels of acute food insecurity and rising malnutrition across Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. These figures could increase to 20 million by September, UNOCHA said. Now, the UNOCHA said food prices are spiking in many drought-affected areas due to a combination of microeconomic challenges, below-average harvest, and rising prices on international markets, including as a result of the Ukraine crisis.
8 companies joined forces to manage plastic waste in Tanzania. Tanzania produces 14,800 tons of waste per day, 48% of which is plastic. 8 companies have joined together to improve sustainable waste management through a coalition called the Polyethylene Terephthalate Recycle Company. The project aims to collect and recycle 12.5 million tons of plastic waste across the country and will benefit in its first phase the districts of Kinondoni, Ilala, Temeke, Ubungo, and Kigamboni, located in the port city of Dar es Salaam. Now, according to Tanzanian authorities, this private sector coalition will contribute to the implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 12 on sustainable production and consumption in this country, where the use of single-use plastic bags is banned since 2019. This new initiative will allow the creation of 5,000 jobs per year, which will give a boost to the economy because the different stages of PET recycling will require people to manage the processes.
All right, when we come back from the break, we return with more news. Stay with us.
The Evening Review is a daily interview-based talk show that dissects and expounds on current affairs as they occur in Namibia. The show aims at reaching Namibians of all age groups who seek better understanding of the state of current affairs in the country. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Namibian Sun and Namibia Media Holdings. The Evening Review focuses on interviews, latest news, and up-to-the-minute current events. Contact evening at synergy.com.na. Evening Review, unpacking today's pertinent issues.
Today we discuss tech with Audrey Shanakira, who's a mobile app developer at Green Enterprise Solutions here in Namibia. She has a special interest in augmented reality and virtual reality and will discuss with us the difference and the implications of these technologies in Namibia, Africa and beyond, and how they can be used to improve education and healthcare. Let's take a look at this video on that.
This is Africa Good Morning, and this morning I'd like to introduce you to the beautiful, talented and intelligent Audrey Shanakira, who is a mobile app developer at Green Enterprise Solutions right here in Namibia. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Good Morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now you are interested in AR and VR, I understand. What is the difference between the two? And could you also just elaborate what they are to our viewers?
Okay, so I'm just going to explain this in very simple terms. Don't want to be too technical on that. So AR, which is mobile, which is augmented reality, is basically what we use in Snapchat. Like, for example, those that use Snapchat, where you have filters for your face. That's what we call augmented reality. And VR, which is virtual reality, is basically when you have the headsets, you are immersing yourself into a virtual world. So those are the main two differences between AR and VR.
All right, what kind of implications do you expect when you use these technologies?
Well, these technologies are being used greatly, especially outside. So we can use AR and VR to preserve, let's say, our national heritage here in Namibia, where we can model 3D objects, for example, to increase the experiences in museums. When people visit museums, you can use augmented reality for that, and as well as education and different sectors as well.
That's a very interesting. Now, how can these technologies be leveraged to position products and service businesses to establish relationships that were previously limited by the pandemic?
Yes, so I can give you a practical example of how Nike has used AI, for their benefit. So Nike created an augmented reality application where people can actually scan their feet and they can be recommended the accurate size of their feet. So this means that they cut costs on having returns, when people order shoes and they don't fit them. And they've used a technology that can actually help them. So they discovered that in their research at Nike that people tend to enjoy to buy their products more using these kind of technologies. So when you use augmented realities and when business use augmented reality in their operations, it increases users and people tend to buy more products actually through that. So it's quite a positive implication actually.
All right, so you spoke about how businesses can use this technology. Let's speak about health and education. What do you think lies ahead of us in terms of those two sectors?
Okay, so like I said, when it comes to augmented reality and VR, you can model 3D objects. So in education, for example, you can make the books come to life. Instead of learners having to read, the plain books with pictures, you can augment that, whether it's, let's say, in a science class, you can augment a heart, let's say, and students can be able to interact with that art. Oh, this is where the artery is. And it's like a real life, come to life kind of experience, and that enhances education amongst learners. I mentioned about museums as well, where you can augment museum experiences. As you know, sometimes artifacts are very sensitive and not everyone is allowed to touch them. So you can augment those experiences and for people to have like a different experience, even in prehistoric times, where you can have a VR headset on you and you can go back in time, when things used to be interesting, whether it's extinct animals as well, and you can experience it yourself. So that's what VR and AR brings.
Very interesting technologies. Now, you are quite passionate about this. What other apps are you working on currently?
Well, we are working on a lot of apps at Green, but I won't say much. What I can say is an app that we actually developed during the pandemic, Tap a Meal. It's a food ordering app where we try to bridge the gap of restaurants and the user and the consumer. So you can order your food from any restaurants on Tap a Meal, and your food will be brought to your doorstep.
Is this available on Google Store and App Store?
It's available on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store as well.
That's fantastic. Now tell us why you love IT so much.
Well, for me personally, having to have an idea from your mind as a concept and being able to translate that into code and being able to translate that into a software that can actually solve a real life problem is where my passion lies.
Okay,
yes.
Interesting. Now, what if I want to join IT? What advice do you have for me in terms of joining that career space and really thriving in it?
Okay, well, talking from experience, you have to at least have some kind of interest in that, because you cannot produce something that you're not interested in. Be it computers. For me, I actually started loving IT because of my background in video games. That actually motivated me. So if you have a passion for IT, you can join computer lessons and you start from there, you code, and there's so many varieties when it comes to IT. You can code, you can do mobile apps, ERP systems, different software systems, or even websites as well. So you can choose where your passion lies. And yes, that will be it.
Audrey, thank you very much for joining us right here on Africa Good Morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, this has been Audrey Chanakira, who is a mobile developer at the Green Enterprise Solution right here in Namibia, talking to us about very interesting technologies. I didn't even know that I use AR on Snapchat. I'm sure you too learned something with this from Audrey, rather. We'll be right back with more. What a fruitful conversation that was. Now, the Executive Director in the Ministry of International Relations, Ambassador Pendananda, this week welcomed members of the Diplomatic Corps for their annual briefing meeting with Minister of International Relations, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah.
Good morning. My duty today is one of the simplest, and that is to welcome you to this diplomatic briefing by the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, the first one following an almost 2-year break due to the COVID-19 pandemic that has derailed our activities. Let me also welcome the non-resident heads of mission to this briefing session. I believe that our time here together will be fruitful as we affirm to strengthen our relations, our diplomatic and economic relations between Namibia and the respective countries, as well as with the respective regional and international organizations we represent. The government of the Republic of Namibia, through the Ministry of International Relations and Cooperation, continue to attach great importance to its relations with the international community, hence holding sessions such as this, which are meant to provide a briefing to the diplomatic corps on national and international contemporary issues of significance to Namibia, and exchange views with the diplomatic corps on issues related to the conduct of diplomacy. With these few words, I want to once again welcome you all, and I wish you all success as we
Minister of International Relations Netubo Nandi-Ndaitwah addresses members of the diplomatic corps after an almost 2-year hiatus as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic, saying Namibia had received overwhelming support in its efforts to contain the pandemic. Let's take a look.
The opening of the world in the first half of this year, Namibia has experienced trade missions which took place in countries such as Angola, Ghana, India, Nigeria, Qatar, Spain, Switzerland, United States of America, and United Arab Emirates, just to mention. We look forward to continue working with you, Your Excellencies, on the trajectory of further strengthening economic ties between Namibia and your respective countries and organizations, and how we can link our private sector, who are our partners in the realization of the AU Agenda 2063 and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Accordingly, the Ministry continues to value all our bilateral partnership, and since our last diplomatic briefing, we had several successful bilateral meetings with your respective countries.
Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah also informed members of the diplomatic corps that Namibia has undertaken several missions to various countries to promote trade and bilateral relations.
Namibia received and is still receiving enormous material support from our bilateral and multilateral partners in order to combat the spread of COVID-19. We commend and thank all of you for having effectively mobilized such a support from your respective countries and organizations, which assisted us to manage the COVID-19 to the level where we find ourselves today. In the same vein, referring to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, this has presented an opportunity for the international community to adjust ways of interacting with one another when crisis starts in the best interests of all citizens of the world. For the African continent, among others, the pandemic reaffirmed the importance of a certain level of self-reliance, be it in the area of service, food, transportation, energy, manufacturing, and many others. Going through this pandemic, we learned that Africa must continue to work together and lessen our dependency on outside the world by focusing our efforts on intercontinental cooperation through trade and adding value to our primary commodities while creating value chain for economic growth.
Nandine Daitwa told members of the diplomatic corps that Namibia is positioning itself to benefit from the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement in line with the goals of Agenda 2063 of the African Union.
The Continental Free Trade Area provides us with an opportunity to maximize intra-Africa trade and boost economic recovery, thus realizing sustainable development through the creation of employment, thereby reducing poverty. This has become more relevant as we strive to revive our economies post-COVID-19. As such, for Namibia, economic diplomacy remains a crucial element on the charge sheet of MIRCO and our diplomatic missions. We continue identifying economic sectors where Namibia shall have competitive advantage as we focus on attracting investors to participate in our economic activities to make a positive impact on the lives of our people. One of our priorities is to ensure food security. Hence, agriculture will remain a focus on our economic recovery agenda, while we fully aware and pay attention to the main enablers of this sector, such as energy and water. We thank the World Food Programme and all of you who are joining us in driving our agricultural sector and its enablers. Namibia recognizes the importance of a just energy transition. We therefore wish to register our appreciation to all our bilateral and multilateral partners who have been working with us and assisting us in our desire to become a leader or leading green hydrogen hub in the continent.
We definitely do look forward to enjoying the good fruits that we are going to get from the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement. Now let's have a look at the weather.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. WHO's World Mental Health Report says that mental health is the leading cause of disability. How did the pandemic impact our mental health? What are the signs and how can we keep ourselves mentally healthy? Dr. Mark van Ommerman explains in Science in 5.
WHO's World Mental Health Report says that mental health is the leading cause of disability. What are the signs and how can we keep ourselves safe? Hello, I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith. Welcome to Science in 5. We are talking to Dr. Mark van Ommerman. Welcome, Mark. Mark, tell us about this WHO report that says that mental health is a leading cause for disability. Explain that to us.
WHO does advanced calculations in coming up with a conclusion like that. And these calculations, they include a number of different sources of information. One of them is that for an individual, when they have a mental health condition such as depression, it's actually very impairing. So many workplaces, the leading cause for people not being at work for sickness leave is because of mental health conditions, although that's often not said. Similarly, these conditions are very common. In fact, they start off in the teenage years, in adolescent years, and largely they are untreated. Indeed, only less than 1 in 3 people around the world are getting mental health care for their mental health condition.
Mark, speak to us about how the pandemic has impacted our mental health, and also how can we recognize these signs in ourselves or in our loved ones?
The pandemic has been, as you can imagine, very hard on people's lives, and it has really shown a light on mental health. The rates have gone up first year of the pandemic for anxiety and depression about 25%, meaning that about 25% more people than before had depression or anxiety, which is enormous. And for suicide, we didn't see the rates go up, but that's good news, but we're carefully monitoring that. In terms of people with pre-existing severe mental illness, they were more likely to catch the virus, more likely to be severely ill from the virus, and in fact even more likely to die from the virus. These are facts that are very important and have not been highlighted enough. In terms of your own mental health, if you find yourself to have persistent anxiety, which you didn't have before, persistent sadness or depression or sad mood that you didn't have before, or drinking more alcohol, or having lost pleasure and interest in things that you used to like, and then these are concerns, and you need to take action to either seek help or to learn about how to manage these.
So Mark, tell us, what can people do to keep themselves mentally healthy?
To stay mentally healthy, one can do a number of things. One of the things that one can do and should do is to stay physically active. That's important for health and physical health. Second thing that's very important to do is to avoid alcohol. Alcohol is often used by people to think that they would be mentally feeling better, but actually it makes mental health problems more complex and more difficult to overcome. Thirdly, one should do every day something that is either enjoyable or meaningful. If enjoyable, could be talking to a friend or go for a walk. And finally, one can practice stress management techniques such as mindfulness, which is increasingly popular and is evidence-based. If you develop a mental health problem and these tips are not enough, then it will be important to seek help, preferably from a health professional. But let's say there's no trusted health professional in your community, then at least talk to a trusted person in your community, maybe a friend or another person that you think is worth discussing with, to get their to have them listen to you and perhaps get their feedback on how you can deal with your difficulties. Also, what can be helpful is self-help. There are a number of self-help books out there and self-help materials online. When they are based on what is called cognitive behavioral therapy, then they're usually very good.
Thank you, Mark. Here's wishing you all good mental health. Until next time then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Well, happy Friday. Let's get into our economic news. Rising input costs could see SA farmers planting less. South African farmers may resort to planting fewer crops as persistent load shedding disrupt planting schedules and spiraling fuel prices make it more expensive to undertake a daily farming operation. This is according to Agri-SA Executive Director Christoph van der Riede, who believes that the current challenges faced by the country's food producer could have serious repercussions not only for the sector but for food insecurities too. With Eskom placing the entire country on a power supply roster, farmers, especially those who are dependent on the national grid, are left unable to use pumping station, irrigation, cooling and other systems which are critical to their operations, explained Reed.
In our next story, Chinese technology helps Kenya improve mobile payment service. Chinese technology has helped M-Pesa, an electronic mobile payment platform, to maintain smooth operation in Kenya. Launched in 2007, M-Pesa has gained popularity because of the special function that allows users to transfer money and make payments using a feature phone service even when they do not have a smartphone or their phone cannot connect to the internet. However, a rapidly growing user base has brought technical challenges to the service. In 2012, due to large number of users and insufficient platform's capacity, the withdrawal service often used to get crashed on Fridays. Chinese technology helped the operator build a more stable and powerful second-generation M-Pesa mobile payment service. The Chinese technology provider also makes effort to improve user experience and develop more services.
Madal invested in reviving coconut groves in Zambezia. Over 31,000 hectares of coconut plantation in 5 districts of Zambezia province are being renovated by the Madal Group. The agreement is valid for 4 years and provides the involvement of students and teachers of the university's agricultural and forestry engineering courses. Madal Group Administrator Joe Lamerisa recalled that Zambezia was once the largest producer of coconuts in Mozambique and home to one of the largest palm plantations in the world. However, a large part of the vast coconut plantation, which formed the basis of the province's economy, had been destroyed by the lethal leafy yellow disease. Joe Lamerisa also said that Madal intended to reassert itself as a successful commercial enterprise of agricultural and forestry development, setting environmentally friendly standards on social responsibility.
Cape Town wants to change its working hours to boost the economy. What was once considered after hours is now becoming regular hours for more businesses, with many global cities actively working to grow and manage their evening economies. Cape Town and its bustling city center is no different, said the Cape Town Central City Improvement District of the nighttime economy in the city. Sandra Gordon, CCID research economist, is working on an NTE impact study in collaboration with the University of Cape Town and the Urban Real Estate Research Unit. The nighttime economy of a CBT goes well beyond a bustling collection of trendy coffee shops, restaurants, pubs and clubs, she said. Right now, the CBD's post-pandemic NTE has the potential to give the downtown economy a lucrative boost, she said.
Well, coming up next, let's have a look at our economic indicators.
Let's take a look at our sports news, brought to you all the way from Cape Town by Ari Hogat.
Good day everyone, in time for international sports news, starting off with hockey news. First, it's the FIH, so it's a Women's World Cup that's taking place in Europe. It is in Spain and in Germany. And results there was that South Africa played against Australia. That was their third group stage game. It was a very tough and competitive game, but South Africa lost that game by 2-1. And it's another game. The other game in Group D was Belgium that played against Japan, and it was Belgium too strong for Japan. They beat them by 3-0. That results mean that in Group D, we know the teams that will go through to the quarterfinals and semifinals. That will be Australia and Belgium. So both of them go through. Japan and South Africa fall out then. And that also in Group A games that was played in the round robin still, it was the Netherlands that beat China by 3-1. They continue with their good form. And also Germany that beat Ireland by 3-0. And that is for Group A. The two teams that will go through, the Netherlands, so they've got 9 points after 3 games. And also Germany with 6 points. They will go through to the next round. On to some soccer news, and it is transfer news from England, and that is the news there is Raheem Sterling from Manchester City is one of the stalwarts of Manchester City. He indicated that he's leaving the club. He could negotiate terms with Chelsea, so he is going across to Chelsea, and it's the second high-profile player that's leaving Manchester City, the other player being Gabriel Jesus. He went to Arsenal. And other news is that Erling Haaland, that just confirmed Erling Haaland that signed with Manchester City, and he will be in the new striker for Manchester City. Chelsea also have a few new faces besides Raheem Sterling coming over from Manchester City. It is Romelu Lukaku that will return to Inter Milan, so he won't be available for Chelsea. Obviously, he's leaving the club as well. And now continuing international sports news with tennis news. It's Wimbledon that's nearing the finals weekend. It's going to be this weekend, and the news there was Rafael Nadal had a very tough quarterfinal against Taylor Fritz from the USA. He also complained about injury concerns throughout the game, and it's uncertain if he would be able to play in the semi-final. He's been plagued by injury with his foot for quite some time. So what happened in the game against Taylor Fritz was it was in 5 sets that Rafael Nadal won that game. It was 3-6, 7-5, 3-6, and then the 4th and 5th set, it was Nadal that won that 7-5 and 7-6. Tiebreak in the 5th set, it goes to first to 10 points and 2 ahead, and it was 10 points to 4 that Nadal won. So he's through to the semi-final. Going to be a tough semi-final for him. They're not good friends. It is Nick Kyrgios of Australia, but then Kyrgios is not friends with many players anyway on the tour. He's not behaving very, very well, and it will be a semi-final between Nadal and Kyrgios. Obviously, the other players still in the draw also that will contend for a possible finals place will be number 1 seed Novak Djokovic. In the women's side of the draw, it is Simone Halep that continue a great form, and she will play Elena Rybakina. She's a 17th seed in the semi-final, and it was Amanda Amisoma that lost to Simone Halep, and the score there was 6-2 and 6-4. So the other semi-final that will be played is Ons Jabeur of Tunisia. She will play against Tatiana Maria. She is from Germany. So it is those 4 that will fight it out for a place in Saturday's final. Let's close off today's international sports news with some cycling news. It is one of the big ones, or the big one on the cycling calendar. It is the Tour de France taking place at the moment. It was a stage 5, a very tough stage, 153.7 kilometers. It was even more tough because they had to go over about 19 kilometers of cobble road, old roads built out of cobblestones. So it was quite tough on the cyclist. What happened in stage 5 was that Simon Clark of Australia won in a time of 3 hours 30 13 minutes and 35 seconds. Second place, Taku van den Hoorn, and then in third place it was Ewald Hagen. And overall classifications, it is still Wout van Aert that hang on to his yellow jersey. His combined time at the moment, or still after 5 stages, is 16 hours, 17 minutes and 22 seconds. He's 13 seconds ahead of Nelson Paulus, and in third position is Ewald Hagen now, just 14 seconds behind Wout van Aert, and that is after a good third place in stage 5. So that's international sports news for today. Hope you have a great sporting day, and we talk again tomorrow. Goodbye.
Careers Bus Show focuses on the movers and shakers in the corporate world. It takes the content of the Careers Hub that is inserted every Friday in the 3 NMH dailies, Republikane, Namibian Sun, and Algemeine Zeitung, to viewers on social media. This show is broadcasted on NTV, oneup2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Careers Hub, the Republikane, Algemeine Zeitung, Namibian Sun, and Namibia Media Holdings. Careers Bus Show focuses on car interviews, career motivational videos, the ups and downs of different careers, keeping in touch with business and more. For career-related content or advertising queries, please contact zone@synergy.com.na.
All right, let's have a look at our highlights for this morning, and thank you very much for joining us. AU urges probe into Western Ethiopia attacks. Suspected jihadists raid Nigeria prison and freeze hundreds. Sudan coup leader sacks civilians as protesters rally again. Somalia will talk to Al-Shabaab when the time is right. Boris Johnson to stand down as trolley leader. Rising input cost could see SA farmers planting less. Hockey, Women's World Cup semi-finalists determined. And those have been our story.
And with that, we've come to the end of our show. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Friday morning. Do remember that Africa Good Morning is repeated on our OneUp2 website and our DSTV channel 285 and our Gotv channel 94 between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. every weekday. I am Glenn Rashipura.
And I am Aina Raizakweyo. It's all our love, all our light.